time and space. Everywhere and anywhere, every star that ever was. Where do you want to start?
Hello and welcome to the third episode of All of Time and Space. We have escaped from the Daleks, you'll be very pleased to hear. And today, because obviously it's lockdown, we're just going to stay around inside the TARDIS doing nothing. Yes, it's the edge of destruction. I am Iain Martin, and I'm afraid you'll just have to put up with it. And joining me is my co-host...
Hello, I'm Mark Cockram and I am still here.
Hooray! So, Edge of Destruction today. Have we got a guest helping us out with that one?
Yes, we have. The lovely Matt Barber's come back again to have a chat with us.
He is lovely, isn't he?
Well, I'll say lovely. He's,
well, he's
a bit full of himself sometimes. But
he sounds awfully nice.
He is. He's a very tall chap.
Is he? Oh.
If you ever meet him in real life, yeah.
Well, I don't see how we would, because I'm quite a short person, and I imagine he'd sort of trample me underfoot without so much as thinking about it.
Very possibly, yeah.
Put me right.
Just don't go into Exeter Waitrose, because that might well happen.
Well, I won't. We'd like to thank everyone who has already sort of contributed to the show by sending in your invaluable and very entertaining feedback. Please keep it coming. We put out plenty of requests and beseechments for your thoughts. Please keep speaking your brains.
Yes, thank you. It's been great having all your tweets and Facebook posts and what have you. You can also email us as well. We have an email address, which is mailbagofrassilon@gmail.com. So if you really want to go to town and the amount of characters you get on Twitter isn't going to be enough, then send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks for that. And on the other side of this, we'll be joined by Matt Barber.
Grandfather! Grandfather! The ship can't crash. It's impossible. Well, there's something here. Inside the ship. But that's not possible. The doors were open. But where would it hide? In one of us. Something terrible's happening to all of us.
There's a strong force at work somewhere which is threatening my ship. You sabotaged my ship.
Oh, don't be so stupid.
I know it, I'm sure of it. You attacked us.
How dare you?
Can it be possible, then, that this is the end?
It's time to welcome back Dr. Matthew Barber. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Ian.
Hello everyone.
It's lovely to be here.
Yes, it's lovely to have you back.
So first things first, it's time to revive the very popular feature, My Quiz What I've Done, which this week is all about February of 1964 and things that occurred during that month. Are you both sitting comfortably?
Yes.
Not now.
Okay, I would suggest that you pry your eyelids open with matchsticks and we can get through this really quite quickly.
All right, let's
Question number 1. In February 1964, who did Cassius Clay defeat to become heavyweight boxing champion of the world?
Was it? Oh, do we buzz in? Or
well, I can distinguish your voices, so you don't really need to buzz in.
Is it Foreman?
It's not Foreman.
Oh, is it Sonny Liston?
It is Sonny Liston. Fantastic! You've got a point there, Mark. Don't squander
That's the
your
first time
early
for
lead.
everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Sport.
Question 2.
Violent man sport.
All right. This is the entertainment round, or actually, this is the Doctor Who round. Question 2.
This is the entertaining bit of the podcast.
Well, no,
I thought you were going
I
to
wouldn't.
It's
I
all
wouldn't go that
downhill
far.
from
Yeah. Okay.
On February the 16th, 1964, which future Doctor Who was born?
1964.
Peter Davison.
Oh, damn.
No, it's not Peter Davison.
Probably Colin Baker then.
It's not Colin Baker.
Good God. Paul McGann?
Are you just going to name all
Sylvester
the Doctors
McCoy.
now? That lady that was in the one with the Jadoon.
Joe
Trevor
Martin?
Martin.
Who was it?
It was Christopher Eccleston.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ah.
No.
Okay, question 3. It's another sporting question, I'm afraid, Matt, if you want to
Okay.
pop off to the loo for 5 minutes.
No, is it about Crown
Happy
Bowls?
days.
It's not about Crown Bowls.
Oh.
I can factor that in for next time, if that's needed.
It wouldn't help.
Okay, question 3. Which Australian racing driver won his home Grand Prix in 1964?
Well, you could ask the question, name an Australian racing driver, and I'd
Yeah,
be
I'm
struggling.
really struggling.
I mean, I could have done that.
Was Frank
but
Williams Australian?
Frank Williams, no, he's British.
Oh, I don't know then.
No, it was Jack Brabham, latterly known as Sir Jack Brabham. I'm not sure if latterly is a word, but we'll edit that out, please. I'll give you money.
Will we?
Oh,
I'll give you £250,000 if you edit that out.
it's so special being on a podcast to edit. It's a completely new experience.
Question 4. By 290 votes to 130, which famous piece of legislation did the US House of Representatives pass in February 1964?
Can I take a shot? I'm going to say the Civil Rights Act.
You are so right,
say
it's
that.
painful. Ooh,
Oh,
look at
so
that.
annoying.
I'm slightly relieved I actually got that one.
Good. Well, it's 1 point all by my reckoning as we head into the final question.
Okay.
Which to be fair, is a bit of a curveball, and we're going to be here all night with this one. Question 5 for bragging rights and outright victory in this evening's quiz. Which country became the first to introduce the self-adhesive stamp for postage?
United States of America.
Is incorrect.
Is it the Federated States of Micronesia?
No.
Sri Lanka?
Japan.
But no, and I'm not going to sit here while between you
Madagascar?
list every country.
Yeah, you are.
Kuala Lumpur.
All right.
You try and stop us.
All right,
Pakistan.
Madagascar. It's not Madagascar. No.
Outer Mongolia.
No.
Go on, put us out of our misery.
St Kitts and Nevis?
The answer, obviously, is Sierra Leone.
Which of
tip
us
of my tongue,
was geographically closer?
I've got a feeling you were with Madagascar.
Just one question. Where is Sierra Leone again?
It's West Africa.
Oh, in that case, I was the geographically closest.
Well,
Thank you.
Africa's quite big, and Madagascar is off the eastern coast, so
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Anyway, so that was I think less shambolic than the first time we did the quiz, but
The bar was set fairly low.
yeah.
How many did you do? Did you do this quiz for the Daleks as well?
Oh yeah,
Okay, so this is the third time you've done it.
yeah.
Okay, fine.
Diminishing returns, Mr. Barber. So, should we turn our conversation towards the brink of the edge?
Let's do that, shall we? So, Edge of Destruction, Matt.
So, Edge of Destruction, I think, is a really poor story, which, once you stop thinking of it as a story, actually becomes quite important and quite interesting in the history of Doctor Who and that short period of Doctor Who as well. So,
Well, it comes out of necessity, doesn't it? Because of decisions that were made regarding how many episodes there would be and what have you.
yeah. I mean, it was very nearly the last episode. It was designed to be a potential finishing place for the entire series, much like the War Games was potentially a finishing place for the entire series. So there's a kind of feeling of rounding off storylines because it's David Whittaker writing it, and he's kind of script edited the previous ones.
That's right.
There's this feeling of kind of coming to some sort of conclusion, and actually doing a sort of a reverse Andrew Cartmel of kind of not solving some of the mysteries of Doctor Who, but kind of completing some character arcs, which it's surprising to find character arcs in a kind of anthology series at the time, which you'd assume would sort of reset their characters each time, but there is a sort of a conclusion or a development to the Doctor's character and the relationship between the companions of the Doctor. They had an agreed length for the series.
Yeah, so initially they agreed to 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And then they decided they'd go up to 13 episodes.
Yeah.
So you had An Unearthly Child, which was 4 episodes, The Daleks, which was 7 episodes. So they had a gap of 2 episodes to fulfill that contract.
Yeah, but not very much. Presumably they wanted to save money. So this is the cheapest Doctor Who story ever made, because it's made with just the contracted central cast. Mm-hmm. And it's done with the one effectively standing set, or the one, the one set they're storing.
Even if it is regular cast under contract who are getting paid anyway, and one set that they've already got and use anyway, I still feel it probably cost more than some stories in the Graham Williams era.
Harsh but fair.
But it's also unusual to be, so it's the only story that only has those characters in it. There are episodes that only have those characters in it. Like the first episode of the Daleks and obviously the first episode of the Mind Robber and a few others, I think. The first episode of the Ark in Space. Here I am talking about stories I'd probably rather be talking about. Oh yeah, so let's talk about the Ark in Space for a while.
Oh, that was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ark in Space is great.
Early bit of Tom, marvellous.
Yeah,
fantastic.
But here it kind of makes sense. So I can't say I enjoy The Edge of Destruction, but I was sat there thinking about it this afternoon, and suddenly different elements started kind of unravelling from it that made me realise that actually Whittaker's doing quite an interesting thing in setting in stone this kind of template for the series in terms of how the characters relate to one another, and in terms of what the Doctor's companions mean, what being a companion means, and also the TARDIS as well. It's a really important. Without Edge of Destruction, you don't get Legopolis, and you don't get things like the Time Monster. You don't get these sorts of stories where the TARDIS stops being a sort of spaceship, stops being a kind of Peter Cushing invented spaceship, and it starts being this kind of science fiction
entity,
magic box. Yeah, and this character in itself.
Well, they revisit that a little bit in the finale to Eccleston's series, don't they?
Yeah,
where Rose opens up the console,
and obviously in the Doctor's Wife as well, where she gets temporarily anthropomorphized.
And in the TV movie actually. So there are bits of the TV movie that we always grumble about not following Robert Holmes's set down continuity about where the Eye of Harmony is and what the TARDIS actually does and what the power source of the TARDIS is. And in Edge of Destruction, it's said out quite clearly that there's a vast amount of power underneath the TARDIS console. They say it in this kind of prosaic way that says, and that's why that thing goes up and down.
Yeah.
That flimsy plastic box is what's holding this vast amount of power underneath the console. But there is kind of there's a lot in this which looks really shonky and looks really kind of small. But actually, once you think about it, it's sort of concealing quite a big thing, I think.
And this goes on to inform the next, 50 plus years of the show, and the mythology surrounding the TARDIS, as you say, probably can all be traced back to this moment. So even though it's a throwaway couple of scripts, it's coincidentally really quite crucial.
Yeah, and it's also an opportunity to explore. It's the first story that explores the TARDIS, and arguably we haven't really ever had stories that explore the TARDIS, because every time a Doctor Who story tries to explore the TARDIS actually seems smaller than it is.
Yeah.
Because the TARDIS is infinite, and every time they try to present the infinite, they show the boot cupboard, or Logopolis shows cloisters or corridors, or Castrovalva has the zero room, or even
don't forget the Invasion of Time.
Invasion of Time, God.
the brick swimming pool.
Yeah, the brick swimming pool. Or even modern series, Journey to the Centre of TARDIS, or The Doctor's Wife.
Yeah.
Kind of go deep into the TARDIS, but you never get that feeling of depth. And here's the same. It starts this kind of theme of sort of, you're always only scratching the surface of the TARDIS. Or scratching the depths of the TARDIS, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting in this one that the crew all get to sleep on those kind of exciting camp beds, not too far from the console room.
Actually, pretty cool. I know that the budget's like 3 pence, but I thought they were.
I'm not
quite
entirely
well
sure
realised.
you could sleep on something with that big of a curve in it. I wonder if, much like an aeroplane seat, it might not keep you awake. But these are my concerns. They needn't trouble anyone else.
Well, also, Iain and Barbara probably aren't sharing one at this stage. I think it takes a few more stories for them to get it together.
Well, we're going to have to make sure that we've got you back for the moment where you can quite accurately pinpoint where they've done it for the first time, because
what's known as the Chesterton Wright consummation.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I thought that was a chess deal. Oh my god!
You see Iain coming out of the TARDIS much more relaxed.
Is he smoking a cigarette and looking a bit jaunty? Because if there's one thing he doesn't look in this story, it's relaxed. I wasn't sure whether he was supposedly like possessed, or he'd lost his memory, or he was just being...
He's a bit all over the place, isn't he? He's a bit kind of...
really terrible.
Well, all of them are all over the place. And this isn't a story for... I don't think and it sounds odd, but quality of plot or quality of performance, because everything's supposed to be slightly unsettling, I think. And he's all over the place. Susan is all over the place, but she's kind of been all over the place for weeks because
Susan,
they can't quite pin her down.
I think Susan's very consistent. All she does is shriek and faint, and that's all she's ever done. And I think she's
and stabby.
Oh yeah, and obviously there's the incident with the scissors, sure. But I think of the lot of them, she's the most kind of consistent, really. You've got a softening Doctor, you've got a woodening Chesterton.
I thought we'd said that doesn't happen yet.
Well, before every consummation, there's a period of furtive. We're going to get... Yeah.
Anyway, before we go down that rabbit hole, so to speak, I think what this does really successfully is it takes these characters who have been at odds for the last 2 stories, and yes, it puts them through the mill, but by the end, you do get the sense that they are forming a friendship which wasn't there when the story started. Would you agree?
I would.
I totally would. I mean, I'm sort of taking what you were saying as kind of gospel, that by the resolution of the story, where both Iain and the Doctor and Barbara and the Doctor have had a sort of mutual rapprochement, they've kind of come to the end of that initial story arc of them being kidnapped, and now the series could end here, and they are a group of friends who have a newfound respect for each other and can go on to travel the universe together.
Barbara does seem to take a bit longer to come round to being open to the Doctor's apology, but she gets there in the end. There's that great moment where she has that little speech where she really berates him for
and
being a bit of
and how lovely
goon.
was that?
This is quite a modern thing, though, as well, because it's actually Barbara that makes the Doctor realise that he needs companions, because she's right that without Iain and Barbara there in the Cave of Skulls and on Skaro, the Doctor and Susan would be goners. And so the Doctor and Susan were always talking about, how they used to go travelling and stuff. But it's this story where we realise why the Doctor needs to travel with companions, because companions limit him and also give him responsibility. So this story is the start of the explanation of why the Doctor's always travelling with usually a human companion, and that's something that it's a running theme during the Tennant years as well. Because the Doctor, as soon as the Doctor's alone, he goes mental and starts trying to rule the universe. But the other thing that this does that's really modern is the relationship between the Doctor and the TARDIS. Because throughout this, the Doctor's looking at the TARDIS as purely a mechanical object. He doesn't... It's actually a surprise to him to find out that the TARDIS has got a personality, has got some sort of anima behind the mechanics. And up to this point, he's always talking about fluid links and fixing the TARDIS and switches and fast returns and whatnot. But this is the point where he discovers, not just he discovers that the TARDIS is she, basically. And that's the other important relationship that goes through the series, is the Doctor and the TARDIS, and one that's also explored in the modern series. So that's two really major things that this story sets out, I think. It takes them a while to run with them, but I don't think it doesn't really need to run with it, because once they're set there, then the format of the series kind of settles in. So the next story, the companions are actually companions. They're kind of, the Doctor's sort of responsible for them. They're kind of, the Doctor's not trying to kill people or doesn't really lie to them that much. He's just sort of, he's travelling with them. And there's no real question of getting them home after this. They become kind of gap year students after this point, which is what most of the companions do, apart from Tegan, who just constantly complains about getting back, but she doesn't really want to get back.
And then when she does get back, she comes and joins the TARDIS again. Anyway, that's still a little way off yet.
Yes, there's jumping the gun, and then there's jumping the gun by sort of 20 years and 5 Doctors.
So I hadn't realised until I started reading up on this that Paddy Russell was down to direct this initially.
Wow. Who did was it Richard Martin that did direct it?
It was a joint thing. So Richard Martin did one episode and Frank Cox did the other.
Okay.
So I think Martin did the first one and Cox did the second.
Paddy Russell would have been interesting. But actually I don't know, because her strengths are always period settings seem to be she's really strong with. So she did Horror of Fang Rock and Pyramids of Mars, Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Oh, didn't she do Reign of Terror? This is without my all-important books open. But she's a real sort of period director. But it looks all right. I mean, considering again in the modern series, the main task of directors seems to be getting a new angle to shoot the TARDIS at. Otherwise, you're just in kind of a 4-shot proscenium march situation. This story does offer interesting shots. It's always full of incident. It's just the incidents don't always make a lot of sense.
It's a bit bizarre, isn't it? It's especially when you come to the final explanation of what's happened.
So the final explanation is a switch on the console has lost a spring, and it's basically been stuck in a down position, and it's the fast return switch. So because it's been stuck in the down position, the TARDIS has been going back and back and back in time to a bit like Castrovalva, that bit in Castrovalva. Event 1. So it's been going back and back and back in time, and the TARDIS has been kind of seeding clues for its occupants to try
very
and tell
generous use of the word clues.
It's in the same way that you get clues. Do you remember 3-2-1, that game show with Ted Rogers?
And a lot of these clues are purely for purely to create atmosphere. So things like melting clocks.
I mean, that's a great idea. I'm not sure it's realised that well, because I don't suppose they've really got the budget to be able to do that. But
it's nice. It's sort of Dali-esque kind of idea.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, go on, Iain.
I was going to say, while I was watching it, I knew what was happening because I was remembering the novelisation, which I think I would have read precisely once when it was published in, I'm going to guess, 1987. So
Yeah,
I
I've
knew
never read it.
I knew the clocks
Is it
were
good?
melting. It was 1987. The person I was in 1987 was not the best arbiter of fashion or culture.
Yeah.
I liked
Was it
Holly
Nigel?
Johnson's
Maybe not.
album Bang.
Was it Nigel Robinson?
It was Nigel Robinson, yes.
Wow. And he did Birthright. In fact, I'm looking at it right
did
now.
do.
It's
So am I.
opposite. And
Yes.
Birthright. He's one of these authors that seems to be preoccupied with scale and the extent of the TARDIS, and I think the New Adventures did it slightly better, although it's not great fun. But things like Time's Crucible turns the TARDIS inside out, and it becomes this city.
Yeah.
And Birthright.
Does it shrink or hollow the TARDIS or something, or isn't it just like an abandoned shell that brings Ace to?
Isn't it Birthright with the Jade Pagoda?
No, that's
Or am I-
Iceberg. That's
Or is
David
that
Banks.
Oh, and Sanctuary, isn't it? Okay, so maybe Birthright doesn't do anything. Oh, the TARDIS has died, it says on the back of Birthright.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something. But the front cover of Birthright has a really weird image of the TARDIS without the stacks on the roof. It's just got this kind of sloping pyramid roof.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that really captured my imagination.
Didn't they do that with one of the first annuals as
Yeah,
well?
I think so. Yeah.
Seem to remember.
But I think that was a mistake. I think this has to be on purpose.
Yeah.
There has to be a reason, because the covers of the New Adventures would never make a mistake like that. But yeah, I haven't read it in years, but I like the front cover.
It is a weird roof. I mean, it could be a mistake, but it could be that it's sort of designed to look a little bit like the Jade Pagoda, which the other half of it is currently being in the concurrent story Iceberg. Listeners, we've drifted off down a bit of a cul-de-sac about the New Adventures, but
the other thing about Edge of Destruction, to bring it back, so it ends with the switch being broken, and that's the whole explanation. And that is a really minor thing to go wrong, and a really parochial thing to go wrong. But this small thing, this switch, this like mechanical device, has sparked off this kind of magical chain of events. And I think partly this is something David Whittaker does. David Whittaker isn't a science fiction writer. He's more interested in magic, and later things like alchemy, and sort of pseudoscience. Because I mean, look at Evil of the Daleks, where he's got time travel through static and mirrors. So, and also an obsession with Mercury. So there's a whole sort of alchemy thing to David Whittaker. But there's something about the smallness of the switch sparking off these kind of magical signs and this magical story. That's kind of also a template for the whole of Doctor Who as itself. So Doctor Who's about this kind of domestic object, this police box that offers a window into these magical stories. So it's this combination of the domestic and the small and the mechanical and the kind of the boffin level sort of the bits and pieces. That's the base level, and then that gives you this kind of launch pad into weird stories or alien planets or Skaro or history. So Marco Polo and all of these kind of great names in history. And it's that kind of collision of the two levels. And that's all done in Edge of Destruction. And really, I mean, it happens in An Unearthly Child because a police box in a junkyard takes them to the Stone Age. But really, this is kind of saying this is in the fabric of the series. This is the DNA of the series. This is what the tone of the series is going to be, I think. And that's why I quite like it.
We do also get that lovely speech from William Hartnell
Yeah,
as well, don't we?
sort of the educational how galaxies are born speech, which is nice.
Well, I think that was the one line, or certainly stretch of more than one sentence, that he managed to get out of his face without mangling it completely. I mean, I was watching this thinking, they're 3 stories into this. They've, by this point, identified they've got a leading man who clearly can't cope with it. Do they not write him out straight away? Do they not knock the show on the head at this point, as they were, more than willing to do and more than able to do? I find it astonishing that it carried on and that he.
This is the argument. This is the argument, though. At this stage, is whether these kind of fluffs and ticks are Hartnell's performance, or whether it's an early sign of arteriosclerosis. And the argument is it's his performance at this stage, because later, when you get much later to something like The Massacre, where he's playing 2 different parts, he gives a performance for he plays the abbot, the sort of malevolent abbot. And if you listen, you can't see it, but if you listen to the soundtrack, his performance is flawless. He doesn't make any sort of stutters or there's no glitches.
And there was that interview clip that surfaced back when I think they put it on the 10th Planet DVD of him being interviewed at a panto, and this was very late in the day. I think he was in the process of finishing Doctor Who, or he had just finished Doctor Who. But when you see him just speaking to camera, it is quite a different personality from what you see as the Doctor. Is that the
one where he keeps banging on about being a legit... I can't even talk. A
legitimate actor.
Yeah. He just came across as really sort of sad and slightly bitter at that point. And it was really quite, oh God. Oh.
I think that might have been his personality. So he was brought up working class. And he was basically didn't have a mother and father, so he was abandoned by his parents. So he was brought up as a bastard at a time when being a bastard was a real kind of social knock. And then he grew up, and then he sort of flourished through a series of patrons and being given a leg up. And then obviously when he's in the sort of the acting profession, particularly the theatrical and to a lesser degree the film acting profession, there is a class system going on in that. So, and the class system in those professions kind of dictate what sorts of parts you get. So I think he was a reluctant character actor. So I think that's the chip on his shoulder. And Doctor Who gave him a kind of... It gave him a starring part, which he hadn't really had before. Yeah. It gave him a different part.
And he'd made his name for playing sort of sergeant majors and sort of military types, hadn't he?
Yeah, and before that, kind of gangsters and spivs. Whereas Doctor Who, and this is the thing about this speech in here. So we always talk about John Pertwee as being given moments of charm by the writers. So, but by John Pertwee's request, to be given a bit of the story where he just sort of sits and talks a load of nonsense about daisies and and monks on a hill, and really horribly, excruciatingly patronising, even though John Pertwee's one of the greatest doctors and his era is probably the strongest in the series' history. However, Hartnell gets this moment of charm, and I think he doesn't fluff it. I think he's arguably he overacts it slightly, but he acts.
I mean, you try doing that with a silly bandage around your head.
And also,
it's not the best.
And also, he
places,
acts with the knowledge that people watching on the TV are watching on really small TVs, so they need a big performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, now you say that, Matthew, when you came onto our first episode, you talked about watching 60s Who on your phone. Well, out of necessity, I had to use a little portable DVD player that we had, and it's got a 9-inch screen, and it's brilliant. Really gave you a bit more of a sense of what it must have been like.
You mean
back
you
at
couldn't
the
see
time.
you couldn't see a damn thing?
Oh, it was vid-fired, so it all looked beautiful
obviously.
and crisp and everything. But yeah, it did give you more of that flavour of what it might have been like.
It is an idea. And also, he comes across as excited in that speech, and I think that's the point. He's discovered at the end of this story that actually he's found these 2 people to travel with that make his travelling potentially something interesting again.
It stops
They've given him
being
life.
sort of it kind of stops being just book learning that he's got. Suddenly he's got an audience he can show these things to, and it seems to take about 3 centuries off of him. He's just excited so much again.
Yeah, and that's something that Doctor Who. That's a common thing in Doctor Who. That's the reason Doctor Who, the Doctor travels with people to show off.
Yeah,
because we've seen in the modern series when the Doctor's on his own, you see these scenes where he's trying to show off, but there's no one around to show off to, and so they always end in the kind of it's normally those sorts of scenes which end with David Tennant looking sadly at something in the console room.
There were quite a few of those, so it's hard to they all blur into one really, one sort of massive 3 and a bit year period of gurning, and
and that's at the other end of a theme that starts with the Edge of Destruction. I mean, but as I was saying, taken as a story, it's rubbish. It's a load of nonsense. Taken as a breath between the Daleks and Marco Polo, it's a highly effective way of kind of retooling the characters and cementing some pretty fundamental things in Doctor Who, I think.
So I would agree, and I would also suggest that obviously it wouldn't have in any way helped them with their brief to round the series out to 13 episodes. But if this could have been condensed into one episode, like they did with parts 3 and 4 of Planet of Giants, this as a 25-minute standalone would have worked really quite well, I think. But there was just not enough to fill out 2 episodes for me. Let's just circle back to what you were saying about the Billy Fluffs, because obviously these are, by this point, quite intrusive and they're only going to get worse. But you're saying that they're a performance bit of business he's bringing to it. He thinks the Doctor is occasionally going to forget his thing now, Chesterton.
I think the ums and the whats are on purpose. Getting Chesterton's name wrong is on purpose.
Right.
I think there are line fluffs that aren't on purpose, but I think they're inevitable given the way that the series was produced at the time. I think what happens is they're kind of rolled in with the tics and the quirks of the Doctor's character that Hartnell is putting in on purpose.
Right, and so we only notice it when Hartnell does it because we've been educated to look out for the Billy Fluffs, and we don't notice when everyone else does it as well.
And in fairness to Hartnell, everybody... So the setup of the series, and it's the same now, is the Doctor gets the complicated lines. The companions get to say, what does that mean? What's going on? What are you doing? And so Iain and Barbara aren't going to make that many fluffs because their lines are pretty standard kind of exposition, or not exposition, pretty standard kind of getting to the next bit lines of dialogue.
I did see something in one of the accompanying documentaries on the DVD that said that Jacqueline Hill and William Russell tried to help William Hartnell because he would just look at the initial scripts and say, oh my God, there's so many lines. And they would actually offer to take some of the lines to help lift a bit of that weight off him.
Yeah, which makes sense. Which I think happened quite a lot. I mean, we know that Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines used to go through the script and delete lines that they could do with just a look or a bit of business, and they'd get away with it. So, and John Pertwee used to write his lines on the TARDIS console. We knew that, and we also know that because I'm reading.
Was one of those lines fast return switch?
But again, how brilliant that the Doctor, must be the Doctor, has just written down what the switch is on the TARDIS console. At the time, uncharitably looking at it, it looks like just a shoddy piece of BBC design work. But looking at it from modern Doctor Who's perspective, where the TARDIS console has like bicycle pumps on it, and jammy Dodger dispensers and goodness knows what. It makes perfect sense. It only doesn't make sense if the Doctor's right and the TARDIS is a slick, highly sophisticated piece of technological equipment, and not a kind of roughly put together, shonky the fifth companion.
Well, also, this is the point in the show where the Doctor is still kind of new to having the TARDIS, and he's learning, and he obviously can't control it. So I imagine you would leave yourself little notes when you finally work out what a button is. That's, that's only 699 other buttons you've got to worry about. So it kind of works. If there were more bits of scribble by other buttons, door handle, microwave.
But there's a food machine, another food machine in this, isn't there?
Well, the food machine had it had like 2 dials on it, and a button for water, and a button for milk.
So
that's not a full and varied diet.
This is an Elizabeth Sandifer point, so I'm stealing this. But what you get with water and milk is basically that suggests tea.
Yes.
So what it's saying is there's an endless supply of tea in the TARDIS food machine.
So if Alpha
and there's
Delta
nothing more Doctor Who than prioritising tea when they had the food machine.
I'd say they've got
when
their
they had the
priorities
food
right.
machine in the Daleks, it was bacon and eggs that they got. So there's something. Right. The Doctor is basically English.
There is more than that. There is a transport cafe proprietor inside him, desperate to get out. It's like...
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's fine. I think I agree that actually it could be one episode, because a close analogue to this is the first part of the Mind Robber, which was made because the Dominators committed suicide one episode early, because it just didn't have the will to live anymore, so it killed itself, and that left them with an extra episode to fill. But fortunately, the Mind Robber was such a weird story that they could just tack on an episode with, again, just the main cast, mainly the TARDIS set, but also this white surround, white cyclorama, and Derek Sherman wrote this kind of. It's not the same story as the Mind Robber. It's a different story from the Mind Robber. It's not the Dominators. It is an individual story that stands alone, and it's very Edge of Destruction-y. It's the TARDIS showing them clues. It's the main characters going a little bit mad, and it's one episode long, and it ends with the destruction of the TARDIS.
And it is one of the most iconic episodes in the show's history, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think it's like a second pass? In the way that some people like to say that Stephen Moffat is always revisiting what Russell T Davies does and improving it. Maybe this is Derek Sherwin revisiting Edge of Destruction and trying to show, how sexy it could have been.
My feeling is Derek Sherwin probably hadn't seen Edge of Destruction, but what it is almost exactly the same requirements, last-minute requirements, gives rise to a very similar story, and that actually tells you something about where Edge of Destruction comes from. So if a script needs to be written right at the last minute with limited sets, with limited characters, then these script editors are going to take it on themselves, like David Whittaker, and they're going to turn back to the theatre for inspiration, because most of these early script editors were experienced in playwriting as well, in really sort of small scale, limited set dramas. And I think that's what David Whittaker did. He turned to the theatre for inspiration, and kind of created this sort of absurdist, sort of surreal kind of breathing point for the series.
It's a sort of surreal kitchen sink drama, really, isn't it? In that play for today kind of way, but in a spaceship.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not a story that I don't sit around in my home and think, oh, I really fancy watching Edge of Destruction now. I watch it in the same way that that you guys are doing as part of.
A necessary step on the path. Yeah.
I get to the end of the Daleks and I think, oh, I've also got Edge of Destruction. So you watch Edge of Destruction, and then when whoever it is returns Marco Polo, then you can carry on with Marco Polo.
Oh yes, I haven't quite mentioned that to.
Well, he's about to reach the first foothill in the pilgrimage of Doctor Who,
Yes.
which is the stories that don't actually exist anymore.
Oh.
I didn't. Did he really not know this?
Maybe I should have mentioned this before we actually started out on this whole thing.
Well, you say that, but someone's just walked in with these 7 big cans of film. Sorry, Iain who? Oh, Levine. Oh, hi. Yeah. So no, I'm fine. I'm good.
Okay, are we going to rate this then? I'll let you go first, Matt. What's your score out of 10?
I think it's a middling score, but it gets bumped up because of the things I thought about this afternoon. And JR really hates it, which means I automatically quite like it, and I want to find good things about it. So I'm going to score it a 7.
Okay.
I would. If it was performed slightly better, I'd go even higher than that. I'd want to give it an 8, but mainly for the things that we've learnt today, in that how much of the mythology of the show can be traced back to this, silly little 2-parter. But the performances are so bad, apart from Saint Jacqueline, that you just can't go too high. So I'm gonna 7. 7's good. 7.
Okay. Well, I am gonna be the most negative person of the three of us. I enjoy it for what it is, but it is, as Matt said, it's not something you want to go back to for pleasure and watch again. But it's interesting just from what it achieves in terms of setting things out for the future. But I think I'm going to give it a 6.
Ooh, you monster. It's also only 2 episodes long. So if you're it's like Black Orchid.
It's welcome,
actually Black Orchid's quite good. It's like the King's Demons. You can watch the King's Demons.
Oh god. Oh, come on, it's not that.
Well, the King's Demons is rubbish, but it's literally only 45 minutes of your life that you'd spend watching it. So
that's a lot more time than was spent writing the script, I can tell.
Right, okay, well, I think we're going to go to some feedback.
I've got mail.
So the first bit of feedback I've got is, they're all from Twitter. This is from Andy Moore on Twitter. And Andy says, if only her so-called teachers had taught her how to use scissors safely back at Coal Hill. I hope they have a good, long, hard look at themselves, which coincidentally in itself is an important part of this story. Or the important part of this story.
Hello, this is Mark, 3 months in the future. Yeah, I know, it's all a bit timey-wimey, isn't it? We've had some audio feedback from Dwayne down in Australia, and I thought I would shove it in here.
G'day, Mark and Iain. Dwayne here from Australia, and I just wanted to send you a quick message to say how much I enjoyed the first couple of episodes of All of Time and Space. Really love the quality of the guests that you've got there. It was nice to have Nick Begg on, particularly about the Dalek story, and to hear all his recollections and some of his stories from working on the current show as well. And I'm really looking forward to this journey with you. I'm gonna follow along every episode. So thanks again, and look forward to the next episode. Toodles.
All right, as you were.
The second comment was from someone called Ham-Fisted Bap Vendor, whose Twitter handle is @BapVendor on Twitter. And he or she says, quick thoughts, grinny face. Number 1, still recall the BSB screening that showed the EPs in reverse order. Shocked emoji face.
Blimey.
2, Hartnell's soliloquy in rabbit ears on the cause of the effect is very nicely directed, which we didn't really mention. That kind of slow pull-in shot is nicely directed, showing his massive hammy performance. And number 3, On reaching the end of part 2, how tempting it still is to think we can go on to watch the next episode! ! Yes, so he might have a copy of Marco Polo, the first Marco Polo. And the third comment is from the Sirens of Audio, and their Twitter handle is @AudioSirens. And they say, for some reason, the Doctor's speech in Arabic comes to mind. That would have been so much fun to overdub. I love that the TARDIS is...
I think he's referring to one of the DVD extras.
I love that the TARDIS is more than just a mere machine right from the beginning. My Nana, this is the commenter's Nana, not mine. My Nana is dead. My Nana had a pair of those massive 60s style scissors, and they are indeed terrifying! So those are the 3 comments I have been assigned to read. You're welcome.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, I have got Stephen B @SteedStyling, who is one of the guys from New to Who, and he says it's a piece of absurdist theatre, though maybe so unintentionally, I fear. At any rate, the emotional journeys of the central characters and their overcoming issues and mistrust is the main dramatic purpose of this piece. So the nonsensical plot neither adds up nor matters much. If you happen to touch on the novelisation, which we kind of did a bit, I'd like to add that it's very good, which adds depth to the interiority of the characters and even scenes not in the transmitted version that are wonderfully suspenseful and creepy. The audiobook read by William Russell is superb. I must check that out because I do like an audiobook. So thanks for that, Stephen. And we've got another Stephen Shapansky.
Canadian accent, please.
Stephen says, fascinating TV production, experimental theatre as Doctor Who, purely to fill out a 13-episode order in case the show got cancelled. By the time they came to record it, they knew it would run and run. Thank you, Stephen. And we've also got some feedback from Lit Roundels. It doesn't make any sense, especially how they act in part 1, though I think that's a direction issue. But there are some lovely character moments, especially the Doctor making up with Barbara. No, that's true. That's a lovely scene. Nice little scene. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Ian, what have you got?
Kicking off with the Doctor Who show, who
g'day.
is sort of cutting us right out of the conversation and just picking up. He says, Stephen's already hit this on the head for me. I read the Target novel, aged 13-ish, and thought it was marvellous. I adored the premise. When I eventually saw the episode, I was querying why I'd loved that book so many years before. Then it dawned on me, maybe for the first time, that Target novels could often be 1,000 times better than the TV episodes, and it wasn't even the writing in them per se, which was usually basic. It was that it let me imagine the stories myself and think about them with infinite budgets. But thinking about that story, even with an infinite budget, you're still mainly stuck in the console room. So
I do wonder if you're reading the Target novelisation in 1980, 7, whether you're imagining a kind of Legopolis, but a Legopolis with melting clocks and people getting stabby, and that is terrifying.
Well, I remember reading Target books, wondering why Tom Baker was described as having white bouffant hair. A bit weird. Turned out it was Pertwee all along.
Especially with a pleasant open face, which sounds like a severe
laceration.
injury.
Yeah. Anyway, so another bit of feedback from Jonathan. I just reread it last month for the first time in 20 plus years, and it is absolutely killer. So, you know, some
I do feel like I must investigate
fairly
that.
strong feeling there. Finally, Jeff Waddell says,
Jeffrey.
bizarre, but in a good way. Makes no sense, and the resolution of having the offending switch with a label on is laughable, especially 6 years before Pertwee did it regularly. A good and interesting one-off, but glad it was never repeated, though there's a good episode yet to be written, solely on board the TARDIS. Thanks for that, Jeff. That's, again...
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
I don't know if there is, you know, because as soon as you have by definition, because if it's a Doctor Who story, there's got to be, certainly now, there's got to be a monster in it, or a villain. And as soon as you do that, that becomes the focus of the story. You look at something like Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS, And as soon as you get these kind of burnt cinder larvae people running around, you don't really get to spend much more time thinking about the TARDIS. You're finding out what's going on with the.
Well, I think in The Doctor's Wife, they kind of hit on the right idea of having this entity trying to take over the TARDIS, which I suppose could be a way of doing it.
If you look at something like Listen, so the idea is you always have to have a monster. In Listen, you don't have a monster, and that's the whole point of Listen. So something like Listen, but set in the TARDIS. I think the issue about stories set in the TARDIS is getting that sense of limitlessness is really difficult. Is really difficult to do. Visually, you have to suggest it. You have to have those bits in stories where they talk about deleting a third of the TARDIS, or Tom Baker sort of talks about a room somewhere out back, or they give directions to a companion. So they're always suggesting the depth of the TARDIS. I think Legopolis came closest for me to being a great story, pretty much set in the TARDIS, and most of it wasn't set in the TARDIS, but there was a more than usual Bidmead's obsession with the TARDIS corridors kind of really came through them.
Well, I think with Legopolis, it's that bit where they've materialised around the Master's TARDIS, so they keep travelling through the police box into a darker console room with a darker police box. Yeah. And that, obviously I would have been about 5 at the time, but that was just the most amazing thing that had ever happened, and the most terrifying. Yeah. Because the TARDIS is such a safe space that.
And I was young as well at the time, and the TARDIS shrinking was really frightening. And it actually gave me Legopolis gave me. I'm not a Dalek person, so a lot of fans are obsessed with the style and the look of the Daleks and Dalek stories. I'm not. I'm a TARDIS person. So if I'm going to buy a toy, it's likely to be a police box. That's what gives me. That's what I find pleasurable, is the shape and colour and kind of textures of the police box.
I've got a money box which my friend bought me when we were all living in Dubai, so I'm not sure how authentic it is. It doesn't look very convincing, but it is very good at storing coppers. The classic exterior toy would have been the second in the... who did the figures when the show came back in 2005?
Character
The
options.
second one they did was, I think, the definitive police box shell.
I haven't got a character options police box, but I have noticed, if any listeners want to donate money to me, that the second Doctor, they're releasing the second Doctor with a police box.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's War Games set. I'd imagine it's probably about £400 or something ridiculous. It's like Lego. I can't afford to play. I get to the age where I've got like the space and I've got the gumption to just buy myself Lego, and I can't afford Lego. My parents got me like medieval castles when I was a kid. They'd have to take out an actual mortgage to get me a medieval castle nowadays.
It's cheaper to buy an actual castle.
It's ridiculous. I'm so grumpy about Lego. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah, thank you for being inside the spaceship with us on this occasion, and we can only hope that you overcome your Lego distress.
I get my Lego.
Oh, God. Would you like to plug anything while you're here, Matt?
Well, I mean, my I don't know if I mentioned, but my book's still for sale.
You've written a book?
On the Obverse Books. I haven't also noticed, I can plug somebody else's book. Obverse Books have published a series of fiction books based on the Peter Cushing Doctor. They're for charity, so they're fine. Peter Cushing they sort of did a novelisation of the Peter Cushing films, and then they carried on and did kind of fictional Peter Cushing movies with Ice Warriors and Autons, and they've just done one with the Demons. So it's kind of
sweet.
If the Demons was done as one of the Peter Cushing
right up
series,
your alley, then.
Right up my alley. So that's for sale as well.
Off the top of your head, Matt, can you remember who's written any of those?
So they're down as having been written by David Agnew, which is a classic. It's a classic pseudonym for scriptwriters. Mm-hmm. So I don't know who wrote it. So it's written pseudonymously. However, if you're on the Obverse website buying this new Demons book, you could also look at my Black Archive on the Demons, which is also for sale. I'm also on the Strangers in Space podcast, and we're currently in our comfort zone of just talking about classic Doctor Who and basically ranking stories and seasons whilst this pandemic is going on. So yeah, we're talking a lot about old Doctor Who.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us again, Matt.
My pleasure.
Well, that was fantastic, wasn't it?
Ah, that was great fun. Matt's always good value, isn't he?
He is. He's in many ways better than... Should we just step down and let him present all the rest of it?
We probably should, shouldn't we?
We should, yeah.
Maybe we should get him some co-hosts, like we could have like a slightly irritable sometimes, but generally quite a nice guy who's got a slight bit of a Yorkshire accent. And then you could have a couple of other guys who are best mates. One could be into electronic music, one could be into sort of rock music. You could make like a little team. You could call it Strangers in Space. Or
yeah, let me just... I'll get onto the people.
Maybe someone's already come up with the idea.
I mean, yeah, no, the name's gone anyway. Some bunch of tossers of...
So anyway, thanks again for listening. And we must take just a quick moment to say thank you to a whole bunch of people who've left reviews for us. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So I'm just going to rattle off these names just as a quick thank you. So first of all, we have got Ross Aitken from the Gallifrey's Most Wanted podcast. So give them a little sort of mini plug while we're at it.
Let me give
so
them a
thank you
clap
to
as well.
you. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I'd also like to say thank you to Seb Smith and Mark Atkinson from Prog to Who, and Andy Moore,
Thank you, Andy.
Tim from the Missing Episodes podcast, otherwise known as Jabba Ranks. That's brilliant. It makes such a difference, and it helps people to see our show a bit more easily on the various platforms. So thank you very much for doing that. And if you would like to leave a review, hopefully a good one, I'll put a link in the show notes, and it will just take you to the relevant app for your device when you click on it.
Isn't it clever what they can do these days?
It really is. It really is. So, thank you again for listening, and until next time, when we will be taking a little trip to Cathay with Mr. David Kitchen, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
If you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at mailbagofrassilon@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter @TimeEndSpacePod, and you can also find us on Facebook. If you want to leave some audio feedback, there is a link in the show notes. You can use your phone or your computer and leave up to 60 seconds of feedback, or if you're listening via the Anchor website, you can click on the message button and leave your audio. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you to Momo Tempo for providing our theme music.